Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Formula X plus Y plus Z equals sales with me, your host, Nick Boddington. Today we're going to be talking about getting on the phone for your first cold call and qualifying your prospect. Hello and welcome to the Formula X plus Y plus Z equals sales. I'm your host, Nick Boddington, as you know. So the last episode, if you watched it, episode number, was it 14? Yeah, because I've just said 15, forget that quickly, was talking about the cold call. And over the next couple of episodes, we're going to be talking about that cold call and making that cold call good for you, making you really good at it, and making you not scared of it, because everyone starts off cold calling really scared, or they've been doing cold calling for the last 5 years, 6 years, 16 years, and they're really, really crap at it. So, where do we start? Okay, so the last episode we talked about a couple of the areas. Making people feel welcomed, introducing yourself, putting the bar at ease, getting things in common, rapport building. But one of the things I want to talk about on this episode is making that first introduction of yourself and actually getting that person interested. So you've got to imagine we've got past the gatekeeper, we've got through to, let's say, James, okay? So we want James to be interested in what we've got to say. And this isn't as easy as it sounds. You've got to remember that James is tapping away on his PC, writing a proposal, buying. He could be doing all sorts of things. Why does he want to speak to you, and why should he listen to you? Well, the first thing is, which is really, really, really important, is you need to qualify the target or qualify your prospect, okay? Now, this is very, very simple, and all it comes down to is asking a couple of questions at the beginning of the call. Basically, what position is that person in the business that you're trying to sell to? Now, in our company, we're trying to get to the sales or marketing person. Now, in bigger companies, it is a salesperson or it's a marketing person, two completely different areas. Though I think these two areas should be completely molded into one, not as in one person, but the team needs to work together, because I find that the companies that we see, the ones where they work together, they derive really good results. Anyway, I'm completely going off it. So we asked to speak to the sales and marketing people in a company. So we got the call. So, hi Denise, can I speak to James please? Yeah, of course it's Nick calling from MIB. So, we're not asking for James Urquhart, because that will make this cold call sound like we have never spoken to him before. So you need to make the cold call as relaxed as possible to get through that gatekeeper. So if you call up the gatekeeper and say, oh yes, good afternoon, I was wondering, could I speak to James Urquhart please? That gatekeeper is automatically going to know that you've never spoken to that person before. You've never spoken to James, which means he's never spoken to you, which means you're a cold call, which means you're probably trying to try and sell something to him. She knows how busy he is, and every gatekeeper, every receptionist, every business knows that they can't just put anything through. So you've got to be good. So a really, really good tactic is you don't say Mr. or Mrs. You don't say their surname, and you try and make it as relaxed as possible, as if you've just literally got off the phone to them and you need to call them back. So, oh hi there Denise, yeah, it's Nick calling from MIB. Is James there around there please? Yeah, no problem at all, I'll just get him for you. So, you automatically, psychologically made that gatekeeper think that you're already speaking to this company, so she's going to put you through straight away. Does he know what it's regarding? Yeah, it's just something we'll be discussing about the free trial that we're offering. You've gone through again, okay? She's probably not going to reiterate this with James. And even if she does, James is going to go, he's a busy guy, he's just going to go, yeah, okay, put him through, and you're going to get through. Okay, so we've got the gatekeeper down, we've got through to James. James on the phone. As we talked about in episode 14, he's really busy, he's got a million things to do, he's really not interested in this stage in talking to you. So, but you, in your mind, as we said last time, you already know that you're going to sell to this person. Whether it's today, whether it's next week, whether it's in 2 years, he is a potential buyer unless he turns around and tells you to F off. In which case, you probably leave it to another time or get one of your colleagues to call if he doesn't like you. It's plenty, well, that's another story altogether. Okay, so you've got through to James, he's answered the phone, and he's basically gone silent. So you've got two options. You either do the traditional sales technique of going on, introducing yourself and talking about yourself for the next 5 minutes, to which he then turns around and says, I'm not interested, and you go, okay, and put the phone down. Complete waste of time. You need to qualify him further. So the first thing, you get him on the phone and you say, Hi, James, it's Nick calling from LB. Before we go any further, I just want to check one thing. Are you the person who deals with the sales and marketing of your company? Yes, I do, or no, I don't. If it's a yes, then that's great. You've qualified him at that stage. If it's a no, then you need to find out who the person is there. So you could ask James himself. He may not know. You might have gone through to a completely different department. You need to go back through to the receptionist, the gatekeeper, and you need to try that process again. But let's say he said yes. Brilliant. So you need to qualify the target a little bit further than this. So you've asked that question. You now need to know how they create new business. For us, it's how they create new business. I don't know what your service or your product is in your company, but it could be for many different things. So what you need to do is you have something like this, which is just basically a standard script. Now, I don't expect my salespeople or you to literally sit here word for word reading it, because then you're just going to sound like it's completely scripted. But you do need these. The amount of times that you can forget, I forget, you're making cold calls all the time, and you forget what you're doing. You need to have this kind of structure. So our next question, for instance, will be, okay, brilliant, thanks, Jen. How many salespeople do you have there? He would come back with 3, 5, 6. So automatically you have got this you've qualified him as the right person. I now know that he has salespeople. Now for my business, salespeople is very, very important because we sell prospect lists. So salespeople, like I have, call and cold call from prospect lists. Like you know, we do have our other lead sources, but prospect lists for cold calling are very, very important to us. So I've qualified him that bit further by asking him how many salespeople have got. Let's say he turns around and he has 6. I would then ask how he creates new business for the company. Does he just use those 6 salespeople, or does he have other sources coming in? I'm qualifying another area of the business now. So he's going to start opening up with what he's doing as a business to create new business. That's what the sales team's there to do. Remember this. If they've got a sales team, they're either just completely taking calls and orders, which, believe me, there aren't that many businesses who are in that lucky position, or those salespeople are there to create new business. So I've already established and qualified that this company could be a company that buy data or don't buy data now, but I could sell to them in the future. I just now need to create their trust, create rapport, and get those objections dealt with. So I would then ask something like, what is your target market? This question then opens up another door to what their salespeople are going out to. What are they trying to do? Now bear in mind that we're going back and forth on this. If you're speaking to someone, you've already started creating what I call that rapport for the first phase, which is talking about their business. You must remember that people love talking about themselves. If you can get your prospect to start talking about themselves and opening up on how their business is working, they're gonna you could be on the phone for 20 minutes, and that's exactly what we want to do. We don't want to get into the whole, look, I'm really busy at the moment, can you call back? Because the chances are you're not going to speak to that person again or for a long time. But if you create rapport in a really good way, positive way, that makes that prospect want to talk about what they are doing, you've literally grabbed yourself a great call. If you go into the call with awful questioning, you're not qualifying that person whatsoever, and you sound very amateurish, then that person isn't going to want to speak to you because they just think you're a waste of time. So you need to be very, very professional. You need to know what your service is, what your product is, and I say to my salespeople, you need to get inside the head of your prospect, and I don't want you to put down the phone until you've asked the questions that literally gives you a complete solid idea of what that company does, what that James in this instance, what he does for that company, and how he actually creates his sales or marketing structure. That is going to give you a massive amount of structure to create and control this sales process. Also, remember the control on here. If you're asking very, very good questions and you're creating that prospect to want to talk to you about that, then you're controlling the whole sales process for this call. You've obviously going to create, like we have here, a number of questions that you're going to go through. Now, these questions, the way I see it, and this is how I train my salespeople here, if all those questions have been answered in the right way by your prospect, then you should know the whole sales cycle. Now, I wish it was down to the knowing it that well that you could say, right, okay, on follow-up 5, he's going to close. But you should be pretty close. And we've talked about, actually in the first episode that we ever did, if you go to episode 1, we talked about paranoia. Is asking all your questions, having a great conversation with that prospect, and being completely paranoid as to why that person may not order with you. Because that's going to make you all ask further questions that are a little bit more comfortable. Now, it might be that those paranoia, uncomfortable questions come with your second, third, fourth, or fifth follow-up, not necessarily the first one, because they might think you're delving too deep. And remember, this person is going to be very, very guarded. Talking of guarded, one of the things that I think is great in these sort of situations is that if the prospect you're speaking to is really, really guarded, it usually means that that person is the buyer and is the final decision maker. There's usually a reason why they're that guarded, because they've got something to hide. If you're speaking to someone lower down the food chain, they're not going to be as guarded. They're probably going to be quite happy to have a 30-minute conversation with you, talking about bits and bobs. But you need to be able to gauge this, and one of your questions in there should be, are you the decision maker? And if you are there any other people in the process that make the decisions for you? So there we go. Next time we're going to talk about the different types of questions that you'd want to ask to gather that whole sales process and get into the mind of the prospect. I'll see you on episode 16.